As Roy said, my name is Arnie Ken, president of Vertical Measures, and I think some of what he just discussed there, I got my screen in advance, there we go, is covered in this particular slide. As he mentioned, I'm also the president of the Arizona Interactive Marketing Association. I just told you all about that. I happen to also be an instructor for the Content Marketing Institute. And I'm also coming out with a new book. It should be out in about 6 weeks called Accelerate. It's about content development and marketing to grow your business online, which is basically the featured topic of this presentation today. So the screen that you're seeing now is pretty much what this entire call, topic, webinar, whatever you want to call it, is really all about. And I don't know the different levels of people that are on this particular call. Some slides might be too basic and almost maybe insulting, and hopefully other slides aren't too advanced. Obviously, everybody on this call should recognize this as a Google search result. And the reason I pointed this out is I am a Phoenix Suns fan, and I just decided to come up with an example of a presentation or of a search result slide. So I did a search for Phoenix Suns, and the result was perfect, exactly what I wanted to be able to show people, why content marketing is so important, how it's all converging with social and search, and why it's being called the new marketing. And if you look at this particular screen, on the left you see the typical stuff that shows up with Google, where it's images, the videos, news, shopping. You can also narrow your search to latest, last 24 hours, 2 days, so on and so forth. But also you notice the very first actual result, natural result that showed up is 2 videos, content from somebody else's website, not the Phoenix Suns. The next couple of search results here, the next 3 it looks like, are all news-related items. So people, and actually the very first one is a blog. In fact, it just coincidentally turns out one of our employees here runs a Phoenix Suns blog, and that is his. So he showed up number 1 for the news section of this site. You see the Arizona Central, which is a local newspaper, and Philadelphia Inquirer, and I'm not sure why they showed up there, but they did for Phoenix Suns. And you'll notice the very next orange area, I think you can see my mouse hopefully circling it. This is actually the Twitter account for the Phoenix Suns. And then finally, what's in purple, circled in purple, is the actual Phoenix Suns official webpage. And I think that's interesting. Whatever that is, that's the 7th or 8th listing on page 1 when you actually do a search for the Phoenix Suns. And then at the bottom of the page, you see, 5 images there. So all of this is, the universal search results of Google, but all of this is different content put out there by many different sites, and that's what your goal is, and that's what we're going to walk through, is how can you show up for search phrases like the Phoenix Suns, and the next example, which is a little bit more pedestrian or e-commerce oriented, for those of you that are, have websites that are selling products or services. You know that a lot of times it's the big guys who tend to dominate. Well, I recently, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in just a minute, but I recently did a search for, I have a Samsung television at home, and the light bulb burned out on it. So I did a search for Samsung DLP lamp replacement, and I'm sure I put in my model number. I didn't know what it was when I did this sample here. But I think what's interesting is if you look at these search results, the very first one is by a company called Jangro, jangro.com. Never heard of them. I don't know who they are, but they managed, through a little bit of a long-tail search, to have the very first natural search result. You'll see number 2 you would expect, which is Amazon, and then the next group of results are shopping results for that search phrase, and then at the bottom is videos again. And I think you probably all know video can be pretty darn powerful. And the example here, this is a real-world example for me, is, as I mentioned, my light bulb did burn out on my television, so the TV doesn't work. And DLP, if any of you have them, they tell you when you buy it that the bulb's going to probably burn out every 2 or 3 years, and it's not cheap. I think it's a couple $100. So when mine did burn out, I went to Google, did a search virtually just like this. Like I said, I'm pretty sure I plugged in my model number, but I wanted to find out where I could buy a light bulb. And I got very similar search results to this. And in fact, if you look on the very bottom right of the video one, Actually, I guess they're both by fixyourdlp.com. Well, I got a result for them, and it said something about how to replace your Samsung whatever model number bulb. I clicked on it. I watched the video, and saw in about 3 minutes that I could very quickly change this bulb myself. They, of course, had a link right to the purchase page for that light bulb, and I ended up buying a $200 or whatever it was, I think $150 to $200 bulb from this site that I had never heard of before. And they got the business, and Amazon didn't, Samsung didn't, Best Buy didn't, and they did because they produced a really good piece of content. They went after a bit of the long tail search phrase, and basically won my business. And I think that's what we're here to talk about. Is content comes in all sorts of different forms. And Google, of course, touts that they want to see good content. Here are actually 3 quotes that all come from Matt Cutts, who is a Google engineer worried about the spam and SEO for Google. And the very first quote is, "Create great linkable content, content that people will want to link to. Ultimately, great content will triumph." And this was just in the Wall Street Journal, whenever February 28th was, must have been Monday. Sites with original content such as research, in-depth reports, thoughtful analysis, and so on will move up. That was written based on the very latest, the Farmer update that probably many of you have read about, that hit over the weekend and really took out a lot of what are called content farms and low-level content, which this is the first time I've really addressed this publicly, but in my view and in Vertical Measures' view, this actually creates a bit of an opening for the rest of us. If a lot of these big content sites that have been on page 1 and dominating the Google search results are now gone, there's a void there. And I know that Google had been working on this update for about a year. One of their concerns was there enough good content to fill the void, and would people find what they're looking for? So that tells me all of us that are out there who have, in whatever market, whatever vertical, whatever business you're in, if you can create really good content as mentioned here, you might be able to fill that gap, and get a page 1 search result. So the good news is businesses, companies, they're starting to understand this whole content marketing phenomenon. The top pie chart to the top left indicates that 51% of the businesses that were polled in the survey, and this was done, I think it was back about 3 or 4 months ago, but 51% of them anticipate increasing their spend on content marketing. And the bottom right, which I think is actually pretty good, is that many of them plan to do it in-house. And I think businesses really should own their own content development if they can. But you'll also see about half of them, or 52%, plan to work with somebody outsourcing that content marketing or content development, but they'll do it hand in hand. And that's a good approach as well, as long as you can find people who can understand your market and your business and you trust to write good, solid content for your website. And as you might expect, the same survey asked them what the biggest challenges were for getting content out. And the number 1 is how do they produce engaging content. Number 2, biggest concern is how can they produce enough content. And then something we all struggle with, of course, is budgets. Do they have the budget to actually produce the content? So a lot of the next 30 minutes or so is going to be how can we address really the first 2 things. How can we produce engaging content, and how can we produce enough of it to really help our websites? So at Vertical Measures, and pretty much the theme of the book that I'm coming out with revolves around this 8-step strategy, 8-step process, whatever you want to call it. We call it a chain here internally, and I suppose now publicly. And one of the reasons we call it a chain is we feel it's a continuous loop. If you can picture like a bicycle chain, and you don't want to break any of the links in the chain. You want to do all of these things that you can. And we have clients that kind of jump in at various points. In a perfect world, you would start right at the top, and I don't know if you can see my mouse there. Start right at the top with your strategy and audit the current content that you have. You then start to research ideas, moving clockwise. Then, of course, create content, optimize it, promote it, distribute it, build links to it, measure the results, and then keep doing this loop. Audit what you have, adjust your strategy, and so on. But some people engage with us. They might, as Roy said way in the beginning, we're pretty well known as a link building company. What people don't really know or don't normally associate with a link building company is we also spend, in fact, much of what we do, the vast majority of what we do is create content for clients.